Hi.
Hey, how you doing?
Good. We're good. My husband's going to join me in just 1 second.
Oh, perfect. What was your name, by the way? Because I don't know if
So it's Jenny.
Jenny.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, it's so nice to meet you, Jenny. Um, I don't want to call you Twitch, right? The Twitch 435. It's, um,
Right. So yeah, you can call me Jenny.
okay, perfect. Well, tonight's an exciting night. So you have someone else that's going to be joining you here in just a second.
Yes, my husband. Um, Sheldon in the bathroom. Sorry, he was just trying to find our phone stand and but let me just
No,
set
no
this here. Yeah.
worries, no worries. While we're kind of waiting for to kind of get started, we're also going to wait for some people to join. Tonight's a really exciting night. It's the first night that we are doing back-to-back interviews. So
Oh, yeah, I was seeing the back-to-back interviews and I need to been wanting to free myself up so I can watch some interviews as well.
yeah,
But
so 7 months ago we started interviewing, and then it evolved to where we were doing one once a week, and then we did we were doing them twice a week, but now we're doing about four a week. Um, and we're the standard schedule will be back to back on Tuesday and Thursdays, right? 6 o'clock Mountain Time,
okay.
7 o'clock. Sometimes it might vary on a Wednesday or a Saturday. We have our first interview in Ireland this Saturday, and then
Wow.
we've been in contact with someone in Australia, so we're starting to move globally, which is pretty exciting.
Yeah, that's
So
awesome. And you guys
yeah,
are in
so
Utah.
yeah, we're in Utah, and so Jenny, what was your hello, sir? I'm so glad that
How are you?
you're
Sheldon.
here with us. What's your name?
I'm Sheldon.
Shelton? Did I
Sheldon.
Sheldon?
Yeah.
Yes.
Sheldon and Jenny. Well, it's such a pleasure to meet you guys. I want to give, if I can, just a little bit of an introduction, you guys, as to what caught my eye and why I was so drawn to you guys. Um, it was, we have several appointments that are scheduled, but it came across my page, and I seen that post, right, where you're in the hospital and you're in the hospital bed and your body was twitching,
Mhm.
and you were probably the first person that I've ever seen and met and heard a story that is similar to what I went through.
Really?
And so even if it's just 5 minutes to kind of give some context as we talk, I want to kind of explain a little bit about what I went through, so that you can kind of understand that, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
Um, I have OCD, and I deal with that and perfectionism. And there was a time in my life where the medication that I was on, there was I think too much, and I was in the kind of a serotonin syndrome kind of situation. And I I was having twitches. They actually thought it was Tourette's, and there would be times where it would just build up. This electricity would just kind of like build up, and it would just go. Ooh! I mean, it would just like power into my stomach area and my vocal cords. It wasn't painful. Um, it did for a time risk. I remember I had to go to the ER, but it dissipated kind of over time. But I was even able to kind of work and take kind of a break, right? You still maintain a lot of your functioning, but I had that going on that I don't ever completely understand, right? What happened inside of me, but it would just cause that twitching. And even today, the if I'm really stressed, sometimes I'll have a little bit of that happens, but most of it is right before I go to sleep. So right before I go to sleep, almost every time, something's happening with my chemistry and electrical changes, and I'll just have kind of some twitching. but it was nothing near the uh, extent that it was. Even when my kids were small, they remember me being on the couch and just oh, the power, right, of that nervous system discharging. So when I saw that, and I know that there's some differences there in our stories, but I've never met. I don't have I didn't or don't have epilepsy. It's not Tourette's, and who knows what it was, but it was what it was, and I still haven't met anybody that can relate to that, right? And so hopefully, maybe that kind of rings true to some of what you know you have kind of gone through. And so I wanted to just kind of turn that time, the neuromuscular movement disorder, the muscle spasms. um, Other than kind of that, and what's going on with that, you're relatively healthy. It's mainly just the right.
Yes. Yeah.
So talk to us, take us back a little bit about when that started happening. I mean, did you have anything that was symptomatic like that through like junior high and high school? Like how far did, what triggered it? What
It kind of just spurred on, and I don't know exactly what triggered it at the time that I started having the shakes in my stomach, which I'm going to take you a year prior to the video that you saw with me in the
okay.
hospital. So it all started in the fall of 2019, and it just started in my stomach. We were getting ready to move into the house that we're in right now, and I was exhausted, so maybe it was just pushing myself into physical exhaustion. I don't know, but went to bed one night and I just started convulsing, and you would have thought that I was having a seizure, but it didn't hurt, and it was just my stomach muscles. And to be honest, I never thought about going to the doctor because it didn't hurt. So I
Something was
just,
happening and you're like, okay, well, I'm not feeling any pain because of it, and maybe it's just going to kind of go away, so oh well, kind of thing, right?
yeah, and it only happened like with you when I was going to sleep, sometimes when I was waking up. Over the course of the year, it turned into sometimes when I shivered. And most of the time when I was shivering, it was like when we were on date night, or, like I said, we were going to sleep or waking up. So it really was only around my husband, and I wasn't vocal about it, and I didn't tell anybody what was going on. So I'd been dealing with this for a year, and to me, it wasn't that big a deal. And then it spread to my body, and it was a shock to everybody. But for us, it'd been going on for a year.
Because you was able to were and not that you were able to necessarily control it, or were you, did you have control over it in some cases so that you can kind of let go and have that be more around him? No.
I didn't. It really, I was lucky because it was just when my body was relaxing. And if I was shivering, say we were outside and I was shivering and I was shaking a little bit, it just kind of blended in with my shivering. And then we hurried and got in the car. And then I guess once I relaxed, the shakes became a little bit bigger. Um, and then we would go home. So I was lucky that it just didn't show up in front of other people, and I couldn't really control it at the time. I think now that they're bigger, I have had some moments where it's mind over matter, really concentrate, try to minimize, try and, I still shake, but I can probably get through the episode quicker now.
You can influence it a little bit, right? It's not like you've
Right.
got control over it, but you start developing and kind of moving into that space of, okay, how can I cope with this, and what can I maybe do a little bit differently in my decisions that will maybe minimize the triggers that happen, those kinds of things.
Yes. Yeah.
Wow. Do you, so on a date, how frequently do you have them every day? Is it every day, and do they vary in degree of seriousness or?
It does vary. At the moment, it's not every day. I did have, this is interesting, where I had a month and a half, 2 months ago, I had a 5 hour surgery, and it didn't really affect my shakes then. But 2 weeks ago, I had carpal tunnel surgery, and it was just a conscious sedation, and that triggered my shakes more than my 5 hour surgery did. Because it's a lot triggered by stimuli,
Yeah.
lights, environments. Sometimes when you get anxious, emotional, but also with heat and cold, um, exhaustion can bring it on.
Mm-hmm.
Just a handful of stimuli situations, if that makes
Light,
sense.
like what? It doesn't even have to be strobe light, right? Like a TV changing channel can sometimes maybe be like, yeah, that was really triggering for me of just some kind
Right.
of, yeah.
Well, my son came home with this app on his Chromebook at school, and he says, "Hey, mom, I can play with these different tones." It had to do with school, and he went up really high. On he There was just a really high pitch that seemed to affect me, and it made me shake a little bit. And then it's comical in our household. So he yells for his brothers to come, let's see what I can do, make mom do, and and then he'll do it again. But there was one time that I had come up on a car accident, and it was a pretty good car accident, but the emergency services had not shown up yet. And so I pulled over to help the people who'd been in the car accident. And by the time the ambulance and the cops and everybody came with their lights going, um, I didn't realize that that was going to make me shake, but it did. So much so that
Yeah.
I called my husband to come help me, because then I needed help
Yeah.
driving and getting.
Yeah, exactly. Any kind of flashing lights, it's like, oh, stay away, right?
But I know that now. Yeah.
So when what were some of the experiences that you had? Sheldon, I got that right?
Yes.
Well, talk to me a little bit about what you started noticing. I know that, like, what, for example, when my wife was starting to have tumors grow from behind her eye, and it was kind of causing her eye to come out. And by the way, one of the things that I really like to see is that you're here. Um, we've been interviewing quite a lot of people, and oftentimes we don't get to have the spouse or caretaker right with us. I think there's just a handful of times where that has happened, and I like to see that because there's just a value in the story and the experience that comes from the caretaker or a spouse as well, because there's the own, I mean, there we have our own, I don't want to say hardship, but it, um, there's a challenge, and there's an increased difficulty with all these varying conditions that we talk about, and people, in short, regardless of what they do to try to improve their quality of life, always have to find a way to better cope with things. And that's going to be very different than the person that is going through the condition versus the caretaker. And it's not a comparison, right? It's not a competition. It's a difference, but it should be acknowledged, and not dismissed, that it's still hard. Sometimes it can impact. And Nell even has said that, which, by the way, my wife wanted to be here. She wouldn't miss anything. I don't know if you've had an opportunity to kind of watch even just that 3 minute post of her story, or get to know her and her story a little bit. But this has kind of been her dream that I'm just kind of helping to push along, right? That she wanted to kind of reach out to people throughout the world, and so she gives her love, you guys, to you sincerely. She hates it when she's not well enough to join. So I hope that you feel that. And
Thank you.
good, good. But with that, going back to the caretaker, um, she she is uh, she really puts, articulates it well, in that they've got their own story. So talk to me a little bit about how um, you started to be kind of coming involved and noticing some of those things and some of the impact that it had, and because it can impact even a relationship, right? Any change, right? It can change the dynamic of the relationship, and you have to kind of learn, what does this mean for us right now, and kind of adapt to that. So what do you have to say with that?
So I started noticing her issues more, like she said, when she started to lay down and she'd start to shake, and it would shake the whole bed. It was it was quite abrupt, and then sometimes it would be accompanied with shortness of breath. And I'm an asthmatic, so shortness of breath is kind of a big deal to me. And trying to figure out how to help her, it was
Scary.
yeah, it is. It's You just feel useless sitting there watching her, and I can't do anything. And you know, there's so few symptoms, and it's so inconsistent that we just can't. Taking it to a doctor, they're just gonna go, well, I can't see it, so I can't help you. And that feeling of uselessness was quite a struggle. And it definitely, we went through a little bit of a struggle. Like you said, there's a change in dynamic in the relationship, and the intimacy changes through those kind of things. And it brought us closer in some ways, and made a definite strains on some of the other things. And so it was definitely a learning curve, trying to figure out how I could help her, and what I could do. And then it was day before Thanksgiving that she woke up getting ready for work, and it went from just the stomach to her whole body. And yeah, not knowing how to help her or what we could do. And so we took her to the hospital, and from that is when our frustration with doctors began. And that put a whole new stress on us, because we went through 5 different doctors before we found anybody who was even willing to start looking into it. And the first doctor said it was just in her head, and that she's making it up. And that was super frustrating,
Wow,
because I
that's
I know
brutal.
she's not that kind of person. And so you just get aggravated with the doctors in that medical field. And they moved us from the hospital to a spine doctor that was an injury doctor, which didn't. He goes, I don't know why they sent you here, because I can't do anything for you. You've got to go to somebody different. And so he sent us to another specialist. And we've I think we've been through, what, 6 doctors now, 7 doctors, trying to find some sort of solution, and everyone has a different set of tests they want to run. And we've been incredibly blessed that I work at the hospital, so I do maintenance at the hospital, and so any of those lab tests have been covered, which is phenomenal. That's helped us out a great deal that way. Um, but the amount of times that she was in the hospital getting blood drawn, and all those things,
MRIs and
MRIs,
CAT scans and
and
two spinal
lumbar
taps.
punctures,
Yeah.
it was, it's incredibly difficult to see, my wife get all of that strain on her body, and not get any answers, and not be able to comfort her, because I don't know what's going on either, and I don't know how to help. And it's been a roller coaster for sure. We keep going, yay, it's not this one, but we still don't have an answer. And
Right.
that frustration has definitely taken a toll on us for sure. Uh,
Well, it brings back memories, as I've been in, MRIs and hospitals with my wife, and procedure after procedure, and people trying to fix it, make things better and things, and especially as a guy, I think that there's just something in us uh, that doesn't matter how many times you say it, um, that it's okay that we can't help certain things, it's still never okay. It's like our job. It's like inside of us. We want to fix it. Sometimes even to our fault, when women want to just talk and be heard and listened and comforted and have a tenderness to them. We don't move into that mode, and instead we're like, okay, I'm ready to fix it, or I can't fix it and now I'm frustrated. And sometimes they just are like, look, you know what will actually help me is to just be tender with me right now.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that rings true to you, or for those that are watching this will be recorded to YouTube. um but that was a struggle for me, because I kind of almost selfishly, I suppose, and I was trying to satisfy something that was very unsettling in me, and that um, I should be able to manage this better, so that I'm going through less professionals to find the solution, right? And so I uh, should be able to at least do something, rather than being completely helpless and feeling like that. Even though she's claiming that it's helpful for me listening, how could that possibly be helpful? You know what I mean?
Right.
And I'm doing a lot better. It's talk about things to help bring it closer together. A ton of challenging that has to go on in our mindsets, in terms of our thinking about things. And when I do less of that, interestingly enough, when I let go of that's not my role, to have all the solutions, and to be to help in maybe the ways that I'm expecting that my role should be. And I just have those simple moments of just being successful at just being tender, and just slow things down, and tone. I mean, that was huge. I still struggle with always finding, the tone and how you say something can speak volumes, and if you're just all wrapped up and frustrated, da, 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 what kind of experience is that creating
Right.
Right.
for them, right? So a lot of growth can happen, and maybe, does that ring true to you guys as well, in terms of that dynamic that?
Yeah. I think
Absolutely.
the frustrations can build up. Um, I think the way we try just naturally have the dynamics in our relationship is and he's an intense lover, wants to fix, wants to, I mean, he's the epitome of knight in shining armor. I want to take care of my family, and
Yeah,
you know, and in every way. And but I know he has frustration, and there's the bills and the financial side of things, and taking care of my family and all that stuff. But I want to be there for her.
yeah,
I think even though he stresses over finances, he tries to, I think, keep that more to himself so he doesn't bring more stress on me. And so that's kind of his silent side. But then sometimes it builds up when it comes out. But then on my side, I think I'm bringing on another bill, and I have to have
yeah.
another,
The
and
guilt.
I'm the guilt, yeah, and the guilt of the finances, but also the guilt of um well, it can't be comfortable when I'm shaking next to him in bed. Or, what if this is progressive? What if I need more of his help? Because I mean, he holds me in bed to keep me from shaking so much. Or when I get out of the car sometimes and I'm unstable and he carries me, or we're walking in the store and I've got to hold on to him and I'm like, wobbly and shaking. And for me, I wonder how this affects him. And I try and keep that part of my stress quiet because, I don't want to be a burden on him. I don't want to bring that on him. And so we kind of have our silent frustrations that maybe we'll share with other people, and we try not to let it build up with each other. We try to be tender and supportive and be there for each other. But sometimes the frustrations do come in and they creep up, and we've had to have some talks, and but it helps the communication become better and more clear, and you become closer, and you know.
It's so amazing, you guys. I can't say enough how much it means to us for you guys to join us, and others. I know that we're living in a time where people are feeling more comfortable talking about things, and men are starting to come. Even whether it's conditions that they are they have. We've talked with people, a gentleman Antonio that has bipolar, right, and people are just talking a lot more. Um, and it's still difficult, right? I mean, it takes courage to kind of have that vulnerability. I think that sometimes men kind of mistakenly view some of it as a weakness, right? If I share that, hey, I'm hurting or I'm struggling or hey, maybe I'm not good at this right now, and I'd rather just fix something rather than get better at really just listening and having you feel like we've connected. I can go on and on, and I think that guys could just say amen, amen. And for those that are even just showing up to the party and being part of the conversation, that's a huge thing, and so I commend you for that because it's not just an easy thing, and I want you to know that stigmas and fears and those kinds of things are just getting crumbled, right? I mean, people oftentimes worry about those things, and that's sometimes maybe things that get in the way, but having an environment, people connecting, a platform like this, or even just their own posts that they're doing, they're seeing that positivity response where people are actually looking up to them and seeing them as an example and things, and that's certainly true with you guys, for sure. Because I can relate. I mean, we could go on all night about the varying day to day experiences, and even Nell, and of course there's good judgment in terms of where you draw the line in terms of what you share. We all have kind of the behind the scenes life, but it's healthy, I think, to be able to talk a little bit further and to kind of talk about things that are a part of what you don't always see, and even the impact that can have on intimacy, right, and relationships and things, and just what you have to navigate through that. So big love and respect with all of that, because I and I Sheldon, I haven't met a lot of people. I want to keep. We stay connected to people that we interview with. So in the future, we'll send like a Zoom link, and we like to invite people that we've interviewed, and then they all can kind of chat together. So we'll do that maybe like once or twice a year. So kind of watch for that. But um, I remember I think it was our first interview that we had. Um, she brought on uh, or she invited her husband over as well, and that was the first time that I talked Courtney. So her name's Courtney B626, and I want to say her husband's name was Steve. But that was the first time in years that I had ever met a guy that could relate to living with someone that had some type of condition. I couldn't imagine it. I mean, whether it was church or society or work or whatever, neighbors. It's not that people don't go through things, but I had never had that, and it's
Mm-hmm.
still limited. This is probably like on a and so I don't know if you have people that you feel that you've met that's been like, wow, he gets me more than and that was helpful. But hopefully, this was some of that for you, because I know that you are certainly contributing to that for me. It helps me to hear what you're saying, because I'm thinking, yeah, yeah, I live that, and sometimes people just don't even see or know about it, and so it's helpful for me. So thank you.
You're welcome. There's different situations in life, just in general, that I feel like with each situation, because we've both been previously divorced and gone through several other things, and with each situation you go in, um, it's a relief and a comfort to find somebody who understands and who gets you through that particular situation. And like you said, it's not that there's not other people that don't go through it. It's
Right.
it's finding them and, being open about it and connecting
Yes.
more openly.
It's true, and it's not just our page. I mean, if you go and look and follow the people that we've interviewed, and as we continue to post and things, there's just amazing people. But there sometimes people will give feedback. Hey, I found your page because of this person, right? And so you kind of see, a community kind of getting built that there was largely kind of an absence of that. In fact, we've been in contact with the American Chronic Pain Association, and we have plans to do kind of some collaborative fundraising with them. And they're a 40-year+ organization, and they don't have any presence in TikTok, And so our nonprofit that we kind of have, going, we're working on the exemption status. I'm going to push to. I hope to have to possibly be the first chronic pain um, donation space on TikTok. You know how you got the American the Heart Association and all these other nonprofits that you see people, and there's nothing that represents pain or different conditions, and so that's kind of what we're pushing for. But yeah, you're part of that community, and we hope that you feel welcomed and loved, and your family, and there's people that I think that you'll continue to kind of connect with, and I'm sure you had a lot of flooding of some of that, right? I mean, I think it was like 5 something million views on that one post, right? That just kind of went viral for you.
And
What was that like, by the way, having something change that drastic so quickly?
I didn't. I guess I didn't understand. I didn't anticipate that. My daughter just had surgery, and her tonsils and adenoids out, and I was laying in bed, and I had just met with my neurologist, and he says, kind of, we're at a roadblock, and we'll just wait for things. If something pops up, then I guess we'll do more tests. But there's this lady who's a doctor, and she has a show on Netflix, and she does crowdsourcing, and she writes columns about people with undiagnosed conditions, and then she puts it in the newspaper and just lets the public give their voices. And I thought, what if I did some crowdsourcing? What if I did a little bit of that?
Oh, I
Because
saw that
yeah,
documentary. I saw that. Yeah, there are people that help each other find the answers. Yeah.
yeah, and so that was my intent, right? And I understand that there's going to be negativity, and I understand that it takes a lot to put yourself out there to like shake like that, because sometimes it looks fake. I get that. I don't fake it, but I understand some people just don't understand completely, and that's okay. Um, but I kind of threw 3 or 4 videos out there and was simply just hoping that I could find some suggestions to research that I hadn't come across yet. And I did, and I got a huge list, and I did take it to my doctor. But the fact that it took off in that one day, and I had a TikTok, but no followers, no videos, no nothing. And in 2 weeks, I had 15,000 followers. And then, I mean, now I'm up to, I think, 18, almost 19,000.
Yeah,
Um,
people
and
are, people are there's three things that come to mind that I think is happening with anybody that responds like that. Number one, people are hungry for authenticity.
mhm,
They just want to connect. There's just there's so much that they feel they got to sift through, or whether that's someone's fake or a facade or this or whatever, and and so when they see that there's a real raw moment, that's very attractive to them. I think the second thing is that people um, either know somebody that they love or
mhm,
themselves are going through something, and often they just don't have answers. So that
right.
whole idea of I am going through something and I don't have answers, people are like, that's how, that's that. And then I think that third is in that space where you don't feel like authenticity is everywhere, and you have conditions that you don't have the answers to. And part of that is you don't have the answers to how people are going to respond. People are just closed. They'll keep it private, or they'll hide. And so to put that out there, and have that vulnerability mixed with, um, something that they connect with in that way of authenticity has power.
It does.
And you guys are an example of a couple that is really doing that. And that doesn't mean you're perfect, and you don't have to feel the pressure, right, of that. Um, but we need more like you, and nobody's more important than the other. But boy, there's such a diverse storyline that we get, and this is unique, right? The story that we haven't talked to anybody that is going through that, and even more so the impact and the dynamic that it has on a couple, like that. So I'm really loving this, and I know that people that are watching this will love it. Um, Now, even though we bring awareness to different conditions and things like that, let's talk. Pain comes in different forms, and I know if I were to kind of talk about the pain that you're going through, Shell, there's pain. There's real pain with feeling helpless. I'm telling you right now, the some of the worst grief and pain that I've experienced is those moments when my wife is in torment and she's right there in front of me and she feels like she could die, and I'm supposed to just stand by her and say a prayer and try to rub her back. I mean, I am in a space of pain and grief that's difficult to put in words. That's just very real, very very real and raw. It doesn't mean that it doesn't have to be physical. So that let make that known that that's a very real pain that
Way worse
sometimes
than
you feel, that you don't fully recover from. So that's that and you don't have to see it. You don't even have to talk about it a lot. There is for real pain happening there. As for you, Jenny, do you experience any pain at all with any of this, or is it just a condition that's just painless?
For the most part, it's painless. If I have long episodes, you go to the gym, you work your muscles out, and you can fatigue them, and you get that kind of fatigue pain. That can happen. Um, I tend to carry a lot of tension in my shoulders, so shoulder blade, upper back area. So sometimes I will get a kick up of pain, and I was getting that yesterday and today, and then I have some medication for that. So I do get some pains there. It'll be aching, burning. It will get in the way, but it's not. I mean, it could be worse. It's not as bad as it could be, and um, I guess I'm grateful that's all that it is.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons why we have included, all sorts of kinds of stories, and that it's not just limiting to, okay, I've got a physical condition and I'm just in pain, all the time. There's emotional, there's mental, there's grief. We've talked to people that have lost loved ones, and all of that, right? Just our relationship with pain. Everybody tries to deal with it differently, but it is all so, um, worthy of talking about, and
I will
sharing. And it
say,
sounds like that's true with you guys, and that, if you were to just talk just about pain, you know, this is a perfect example where, um, you don't have to say, hey, while that's happening, it's just like, it's just cramping my muscles and there's pain there. That doesn't have to be the story. You've got your own dynamic of pain that you guys have with it all.
right. I will say, I may not have all that chronic pain all the time that some other people do. My chronic thing is physical touch sensitivity. The left side of my body is affected more. And he likes to maybe press my arm, touch my shoulder, different things like that. And it can send such a surge of just hypersensitive nerve. And I can't. handle the touch. And I know there's other people who have neurological conditions that even getting a hug can send them over the edge. And I think that that is hard for him because he's a physical touch kind of a person. He likes to
Yeah.
cuddle, he likes to be there. And when he feels like his touch is causing the anguish, I think that's hard for him. That's an anguish for him, um, to not be able to freely touch me without causing me a little bit of anguish in some ways.
Yeah, Sheldon, it's actually brutal. My wife suffered sexual abuse for several years. On top of that, she's got CRPS. She'll have inflammation and sensitivity, and boy, do we live that dynamic, right? You go from this mindset of all these ideas of what is supposed to be healthy and positive and good in this relationship that's and what I have to deal with this dynamic or go through whatever, we have to sort this out, that where there's this dynamic where that's not positive. How am I going to cope with that?
Yep.
How do I deal with that, right? Because it's not like I'm just going to like switch everything in my head and all of a sudden be like, oh, that's negative for me too. Hey, I'm good. That's great. Now we both think it's negative. So you got this dynamic where it's like, for one person, totally positive of just cuddling, whatever. And then if it's negative for the other person, then you have that conflict of, well, I don't, the guilt of I don't want to be that husband that's just like, screw you. What's your problem? Or whatever, right? Is that, I mean, does that ring true?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's part of that intimacy that's had to change. Is for me, it's a big deal to snuggle and have that closeness time, and it's gets to be a lot for her. And we had it at the beginning of our marriage, and now we don't, and that change has taken a lot of adaptation.
Yeah. And you you go through a grief. There's someone that we're going to be talking with in on February 8th. Emily underscore moves through underscore grief. Her husband slowly died of cancer in front of her. And she boldly put a post that said something along the lines of um, the majority of the grief that she went through was the loss of things because of the condition while they were still living, to the point where when he finally passed, she didn't feel the majority of the grief and even felt some relief and the guilt that she had to kind of go through. And so, what a sensitive topic
Right.
to kind of almost put that out there in kind of that sacred space where you've got people that are in love and people, the relationships, and it's not just couples, it's even just the impact that it has on parents, right, and children and things, where it's okay to acknowledge that there's a grieving that's happening.
Mm-hmm.
um, uh, and I would even go so far as to say that it's a more intense grief than if someone passed. Because if
That
somebody
can,
if somebody that you loved passed, not to minimize that, in any way, but what I've learned is along with that is not only the all the coping and this whole thing that we're talking about with how life changes, but there's almost like a blessing from heaven, I suppose, that of feeling like that they're in a better place, right? They're out of pain, that you're going to see them again, and these kinds of things, right? Whereas if years are going by and you still have the memory and the people, and I just I was so touched by her, and we're going to be interviewing her because that was the first time that I've seen someone put that out there like that in just that raw way, right? You talk about what and and so that's what that reminds me of is that we're talking about um, the loss of things and still not just making the best of and coping with, but Nell likes to call it she's she's blessed to be tethered to her pain because it has been some of the most greatest blessings and moments of grace for her and for the people that stick around with you and they go through that process with you, they grow and they change and they mature. You have to. It forces you to be like, I mean, and I'll shut up here in a second and then see if you want to say anything, Sheldon, for this. But I remember being at a point in my life, I remember thinking to myself, it's not enough to be a good guy that has, you know, you know, like certain strengths or virtue. There was so much strength, so much virtue, and so much maturity that I lacked that I had to, you know, do way more than that and then get a bunch of grace to fill in the gaps, right? Because I'm still gonna, and that if that didn't happen, I would fail her. That was really sobering for me, is that it just wasn't good enough to just be a good guy, you know? And so that can be heavy. I don't know if you can relate with that, Sheldon, but that's sharing a little bit of my story. And Neil knows that, and we're grateful because it's brought us, you know, closer together. But it was I wasn't always proud of where I was at. I was immature. I wasn't ready. It's not what I had signed up for or she signed up for. These are thoughts. These are things that you think about that you don't want to share, right? Whether it's the judgment or whether people are going to think. But you know what? It is so common. It's not just us. It's so common, and it helps to talk about it. You know, it really does.
Yeah. Well, Jenny and I have been married a little over 6 years, and each year we've had something major that has built our relationship and strengthened us, and we've grown so much in these 6 years. It's incredible. And I was married 5 years before, and at the growth from those 5 years doesn't even compare to 1 year of Jenny and I together. Just the things that we've been through, and the just the changes that we've had to make to just to survive. And we've we've both grown tremendously. And it's those tests are what'll either strengthen you or break you apart. And we chose to make it strengthen us. I'm
Yeah.
grateful for that.
And it's with those trials, then it helps you grow together. It also helps you understand uh, the dynamic of life and what really is important, and it helps you kind of mature and say, well, what used to bother me 2 years ago doesn't even matter now,
Doesn't
because
matter.
it changes your perspective on life and what really is
100%.
important, and doing
So
all
true.
that. And yeah, yeah. And when you mentioned um, that gal going through grief and losing her husband, we had my sister lost her husband. She's just a couple years older than me, in March, but he had a long chronic illness, and a lot of the things that you brought up, she experienced as well. And I think there's guilt for a lot of people who are having dying spouses, who have this kind of long dying process, or couples and people who are just have chronic conditions. And you have to go through the grief of losing who they were, whether they're dying or whether they're just changing in the condition that they have.
Mm-hmm.
And um, I think there's a lot of guilt of, well, I shouldn't feel this way. I'm a horrible person for feeling this way. And
Yeah.
there's not enough people to say, you're okay. It
It's
is
okay.
okay to feel that way. Because I think that's where mental health comes in, and you're beating yourself up for feeling sometimes in a negative way. You're okay to feel that way, embrace it, and allow yourself to feel that way. You just don't have to unpack and stay there, you know? Allow yourself the time to be able to feel that way and don't feel guilty. And so when my sister's going through, oh, I feel guilty for having certain feelings, and the only thing I say to her is, it's okay. Let yourself, it's okay, and feelings that I might have for myself. I've gained so much weight in the heaviest that I've ever been, and there's a lot of people who, I mean, social media is a huge thing for hair, makeup, eyelashes, and thin bodies and all that stuff. But hey, we're real, we're raw, and to me, a lot of that's not necessarily realistic when you have conditions that you have to go through. And so then you learn to say, okay, I'm gonna love myself. I have to learn to love myself and love my body and be grateful for what it can still do and try and bring that positivity back into the mental space and get rid of the negative thoughts. I let myself have my negative thoughts, but we're not going to stay there. We're not going to unpack, and we're going to try to love ourselves, love our spouse, love each other, and ride the wave and learn to love the journey that we have to walk.
Yeah. Give yourself permission. I think I know that that's, my wife and I both talked about kind of struggling with that, whether that's because, of an upbringing, I mean, that's a whole other area that we can unpack in terms of how our upbringing maybe influenced us, right? Maybe we didn't feel like that, it was, that certain permissions could be granted, or we had to wait for someone to give us permission, right? Rather than, hey, you know what? No, I'm giving myself permission, um, and the process, although sitting down like this and kind of having a talk really puts a positive spin on all of it. Nell and I tried to also be, um, you know, direct about how it's not always pretty. There's times we will argue. There's times where it's just not fun. There's times where we, don't want to be by each other. Sometimes because we're trying to, it takes work just like anything, and we're talking a lot about kind of a marital situation, but you can apply this to just any relationship. It could be, you have a condition and you're struggling with your relationship with your teenage son, right? I mean, it can apply to so many different scenarios. But I think that goes along with, the giving yourself permission and not having be bogged down with the guilt and the shame that, what, sometimes it's not pretty, and that's okay. And we, and sometimes it's amazing, sometimes it's just, sacred even, right? And that's normal, right? And just normalizing that, I think hopefully gives people a little bit of breathing room, right? I mean, it's like, let's make some room for grace here, right? And it's hard enough as it is. I'll say this, and then I promise I have a lot to say because we have so much in common. But I've had a lot of issues with God, and I've been working on it. And I didn't want to be this kind of person that prays and have it be not really connected. It's like, if I'm going to talk with you and I'm pissed off right now, then I'm going to tell you I'm really like, what the hell are you doing to my wife? Kind of a thing. I've yelled at him and things, and I've come to know he can handle it. I mean, he has abundant. My belief is he has abundant amount of grace that he can kind of see through that, and he understands that that's coming from a place of kind of frustration and love, and he has compassion on me. So I'm not completely like reconciled with everything, but I think it's getting better because I just have, I'm more real about where we're at. And it's like, hey, I'm not completely okay with you. Or if you walked in a room, I'm gonna feel okay having a conversation. And we still have some things to talk about, right? You talk about, not having answers, right? You talk about not having answers and the frustration and sometimes anger with that, right? In terms of is this in vain or whatever. But I'm kind of in this space where I'm like, okay, what would it require for me to be okay with things? What's the closest thing that in the next life? And if he were to just kind of lose the judgment, that's a big start. If I really felt that I had a God that I was going to see one day, and He's not going to be as concerned with, oh, I'm going to judge how well you did with this, and I'm just going to welcome you with open arms. That is a big start for me. But if I'm feeling like, and I think that that's true just with like people in our lives, if we feel like we're going to wake up and we're just going to face judgment from our spouse and our kids and our job, and oh, who knows what God thinks of me, it's just too much. It's just too much. And that doesn't mean that I've got all the answers, or that I've got that I've found all the solutions, or that I'm arrived or whatever. But that's helpful for me. Can you relate to any of that as well? I mean, that's kind of part of what I've had to do.
Absolutely. Yeah. We're religious, and and God is part of that dynamic. But there was a time when I was single for 3 years with three little boys, and my relationship with God was tight. Like it was there. But then so many things have happened over the years, and there have been so many struggles. And I won't say that I'm mad. I would just say there's things that I have to deal with, and I too am working on my relationship with God. And the last couple of days, especially, I've been like, okay, I kind of need to break down some of my walls and my barriers, because
Yeah,
through a lot of this, I have built up some walls. I have built up some barriers. It, I'm not going to put blame on anything or anyone. It's just what has happened, and I'm trying to allow myself not to carry that guilt, and kind of live real and freely, knowing that I know He loves me and I know He's waiting. Um, if I can quickly share a small little story, several years
of
back
course. Yeah,
in
we can go
my
over a little bit. No worries. Yeah, I don't want to rush you. Absolutely.
sorry, well, and I'll try to be quick. Several years ago, um, I my three boys, and we have five kids together. But from my first marriage were my three boys, and my second boy, when he was a year and a half, 2 years. Anyway, he was a toddler. We were in the mountains. He got lost. We had to call search and rescue, and it was a big ordeal. It was very traumatic. He ended up being fine, but it was a couple hours of search and rescue and dogs, and another couple had found him, and that's a whole story in and of itself. But it was so traumatic for me. But there was a couple that had found him, and I wanted to write them a letter. And there was a struggle, I think, spiritually and with God, of like, why did we go through that? It ended up being okay. Why did we experience such traumatic feelings of losing my child, and just sobs and sobs, and it was really scary.
Yeah,
And 3 months, I think I struggled with these feelings. And then all of a sudden, I just had this overwhelming feeling of, and I hope that this is okay to share in in such a religious way, but
of
um,
course.
we've all heard of the shepherd and the 99 sheep, and his flock of sheep, and how
Mm-hmm.
he'll leave the 99 to go find the one. And it was just very clearly laid out to me one day that um, I finally was able to understand why I went through that. And it was, um, as a mother, I was out in the forest, and I was crunching through the leaves, and I was calling my son's name. And I was walking on these dirt roads. We were in the mountains just outside of Heber, Utah. And it was such a surreal feeling, for my son and yelling his name and having several other people out there and it just everything. I just again a whole other story in and of itself. But these words came to me and said, "Do you remember how you left and didn't even think twice about your other children because you knew they were okay and you
Mm.
did whatever you were going to do to go find that one child." And he says, "Such is what I do, is I will leave the 99 and I will search like a mother searching for her son who will walk through hell or high water to find that one lost sheep." And being able to connect in that way, that like a parent is to their child who will do anything, and you know you'll do anything for your children, and that you will do anything, it kind of gives me a more of a personal perspective on that, that as a parent sometimes we have to be patient for our kids to realize and understand things. And I know that that's the way that my God is too, is that he's going to be patient and let me work through things that I need to work through, and our relationship will change through dynamics over the years, but he's patient and he's there, and I know that he loves me, and he's just happy that I'm trying.
Yeah, yeah, oh, absolutely. Nell, she talks about how much Heavenly Father's behind all of this, and how much he not only works with all of us in different capacities, but at least with this, she has sacred experiences where um, absolutely this is not just a bunch of great people kind of getting together, right, and kind of helping each other. Of course, that hopefully is part of it, but yeah, he is absolutely um, involved with that whole concept, like you're talking about with the sheep. Oftentimes we associate that story with a prodigal son situation, right, or someone that's gone astray or whatever. But I think that it's also um, fitting that what that should include are situations where you've got the people right now that feel so isolated in a hospital and they have no family, or they are homeless. I mean, we can go on and on about the reason why they're not in and being embraced by uh, the fold, right? If you want to, whatever you want to define as that fold. Um, and so, yeah, I'm glad that you brought up that parable, because it's not just a stereotypical religious or whatever. I mean, we're all, however you want to view it, we're spiritual beings, right? And that's just a truth in that people are in need, and you guys have been very instrumental in helping, at least what we are trying to do in reaching them. And um and yeah, and you're in Utah. I didn't know you were in Utah. We're in Eagle Mountain.
Well, we at the time that that situation happened, we were on vacation in Utah. We're actually in Idaho Falls, but my neurologist is in Utah, and it's often that we make it to Salt Lake, and um, I used to live in Utah in
Yeah, we
the
just we just came back from Idaho. We've got some really good friends that are close as family up in Idaho. So yeah, yeah. Nell and I really want to, start traveling and meeting people and things. That's part of what some of the next steps that we're at. So I'd really, especially with this being close, I'd really like, we'll have to be in touch. We'll have
Yeah,
to meet you in person sometime for sure.
I thought that too. We're close enough. We
We
could go to
have
dinner.
we have Tia. I don't know if you know Tia Stokes. Um, uh,
I do know. Wait, is she up in Washington right now? I know
Tia
Atheist.
Stokes. She had the cancer and was in the University of Utah, or I mean the LDS hospital. And she's a dancer. I don't know if you've.
Okay, and maybe it's a different Tia Stokes, but I do
Oh,
know a
okay.
Tia Stokes.
Yeah, so you have to go and look at her, and then you'll probably be like, oh yeah, I know who she is. But the reason why I mention her is that she lives in Utah,
Okay.
next Saturday she's gonna come to our home, and we're gonna interview her there.
Well,
So
I look forward to that. That'll be awesome to watch.
yeah. So we'll for sure be able to give you a bear hug, in the future. And like I said, we'll continue to follow you guys. You guys are doing in your own right just some amazing things, and we're just been privileged to have you guys just join us in this capacity. I'll let you know when that video is posted to our YouTube, and you can do whatever you want with the link, right? If you have a link tree, or if you want to just share it. So do whatever you'd like with that as you're doing your thing. But anything else that you guys wanted to kind of share before we kind of wrap things up, especially for those that are maybe new to the whole condition, right? I mean, they're just learning maybe for the first time that they've got a condition, and they're like, boy, there's all these people that have learned how these tricks and they've got it figured out, or at least it looks like that to them, and they're kind of scared. I mean, what would you say to people that are just
None of us have it figured out. We're just trying day by day. That's
I think it's that maybe we're further along in our journey and we've learned to cope a little bit, by now, and it's very new, and keep the faith, keep the confidence. It's so easy to get bogged down by your own things, and you go into the doctor and they tell you it's just another normal test, no answers, and it's easy to break down in tears right then and there, and it's easy to give up. And the two things that keep me going is I do take breaks in between testing because mentally I need it. Um, but the two things that keep me going, and not giving up is the fact that I have kids and I want to know if it's hereditary and I want to know if it's progressive so I can continue to be there and make people's lives. Those are the
help
two things
them?
that keep me going. So find something that keeps you going, keeps you alive, whether you found your diagnosis, whether you're still testing, just find something that keeps you motivated. But it's okay to take breaks. It's okay, to understand that they don't know everything, and that's why we call it practicing medicine, and to be forgiving of the process, but not
Yeah.
to completely give up, and that there are others out there, and I hope that people can find other people to connect with in their process. But I would say that try and look for other people who you can relate to, who you can go through the journey with, or at least share and connect.
Yeah, you're not alone. Yeah, there are
Hmm.
people that are there to connect with for sure.
Right.
I love it. Well, again, you guys, I can't say enough about how grateful that we are, and I know Nell's gonna look forward to watching the video, and she had poked in here a little bit and said hi and things. She tries to do that, but she's in bed. She actually even had just some dental surgery that's really just been her. She's all swollen. It's just a mess. So she's trying to recover for some emergency dental surgery that had happened too. So I'm so sorry that she wasn't able to be here. I'm confident you'll be able to meet her, especially with this kind of being
Yeah.
close. So we'll be in touch, and we'll have to figure something out. Oh, here she is. She says, "Hey, hello, beautiful. You're simply incredible." Yeah, Nell. They're in Idaho, Utah here, so they've got a lot in common, sweetie. So we'll be in touch with them. We'll have to arrange to connect up with you guys for sure.
And we would
So
love that. And we hello now. We sure think a lot of you guys, and we're grateful that we can connect and have some um, similarities in our situation, and be part of the support.
Yeah. Thank you.
So thank
Thank you
you
so
so
much.
much for
That means a
having us.
lot. Well, we'll let you go because I know it's starting to get a little bit late. But thanks again, you guys.
Thank
Yeah, and we our next interviews that we'll be having. We've got one Saturday in Ireland. So
Oh,
whether
cool.
you catch the recording or whatever, we're starting to kind of reach out globally. So it's kind of pretty exciting. So
That is
That's
very
awesome.
exciting.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So great to have you guys be a part of it, and
Thank you.
have an amazing night, you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You
You do the
too.
same.
Okay, thanks, you guys.
Thanks.
We'll see ya.
See you.
Bye.
Bye.